Another month, another wrap up. Let's get into all of the books that I read in the month of July. And also, did I not tell you that that suitcase would be there for 3 to 5 business days? It's been past that at this point. I'll unpack it tomorrow. That's a me problem for another day. I read 9 books in the month of July. Not gonna lie, it was a pretty rough reading month for me. Probably my worst reading month overall, not in terms of numbers, but in terms of the books that, like, I didn't have a single 5-star except for my reread. Yeah, I still had like some solid books. Like, I still had some solid ones. I just didn't have any this month that like are new favorites. Also, I finally got these cute little coffee cups. They're adorable. Love them. Okay. First up, I started the month with a novella because it was necessary, and I read Complicated by Lilifin, and I thoroughly enjoyed this, y'all. This was so fun. So it's the 3rd book in the Haven Cove series. They're standalone, so you don't need to read one in order to read the other. They all just take place at the same fun country summer club, but follow different couples. So this one specifically follows Ainsley and what are their other names? Noelle and Silas. This one is an MFM brother's best friend romance. So Ainsley ends up taking over a lifeguarding position for her older brother at Haven Cove for the summer because he ends up getting another job opportunity and he ends up taking that, but he needs someone to cover for him. So Ainsley agrees to go. And when she arrives there, she meets back up with Noelle and Silas, who are 2 of her brother's best friends. And her brother ends up texting the 2 of them and is like, hey, my little sister's coming. You better keep an eye on her. Keep all the guys away from her. Like, don't let her get up to any trouble. But meanwhile, the 2 of them are both like, actually, we really want to be with your sister because she's really hot. And it just ends up being their summer fling. It's a novella. It's short. It's hot. It's to the point. There's like a crazy little like suspense thing at the end that kind of came out of nowhere. But honestly, these are just so fun. I thoroughly enjoyed Brazen, which was the 2nd one in the series. And I'm going to keep going because they're just, I have no other way to describe them than they're fun. And the setting is cool. It's like at this really bougie country club in the summer. Like, I kind of picture it as being like Lava Springs, except instead of like all high schoolers working, it's all like hot college and like young adults working that are like hooking up with guests and hooking up with each other. And like, what's not fun about that? Next up then, I read The Heir by Sophie Lark. So this is the 1st book in the Kingmaker series. It is a mafia Hogwarts school for mafia children series, and it's her 2nd generation off of the Brutal Birthright series. And this one specifically follows the son of the couple from the last book in that series, Heavy Crown. What is Leo? Leo is the hero in this one, and Anna is the heroine, and she is the daughter of the couple from the 2nd book, Stolen Heir, in that series. And then you also get a 3rd POV in this one, which is Dean. And I don't really, I guess, want to like spoil how he comes into the mix, but he's got some issues. Let's just put it that way. The premise is that in this world, when mafia children turn 18, they have the opportunity to attend the Kingmakers Academy, which is similar to Hogwarts in terms of like it's far away. You can't have like contact with your family. It's like on this like random island, and it's kind of like gothic-y. And when they arrive, you're sorted into like a house of what you're going to be doing for your family. So like if you're going to be the leader, enforcer, accountant, spy, I think are the 4. And Leo is going to be taking up for his father and his mother's like business. You know, he's going to end up being an heir, as well as Anna. She is the oldest child of Miko and Nessa. So they're both there to kind of learn that. But one of the biggest issues, but also biggest rules at Kingmakers is that you can't attack anyone, you know, even though all these kids here have like decades long of family beef, you know? And Dean is one of those people that has a lot of beef with Leo, and he really tries to mess with him, and he does that through Anna a lot of the times. And Anna and Leo have been best friends since they were babies, so they're very excited to go off to Kingmakers together. And they're best friends, but they haven't really crossed that line into romance territory. But obviously over the course of the book, they have to reconcile their feelings for each other. And I don't really want to get into it anymore because I do think, as much as I'm always like, you read whatever you want to read, and still, if you want to jump right into this book, you jump right into this book. However, I do think that reading the Brutal Birthright series before jumping into this one would make this the richest experience. So I don't really want to like get too much into like spoilers because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't read Brutal Birthright or anything. But I really enjoyed this, and I didn't really care about Dean, honestly. everyone hypes Dean up, and right now I'm just kind of like, you're like a little bitch. So I don't know. We'll see if I like him by the time that his book rolls around. But I'm really excited to keep going on with this series. Next up, I read Deliver by Pam Godwin, which is the first book. This is the bind up. It's the first book in the, what is that? What's the series called? Is it called the Deliver series? But anyway, she has these bind ups that have 3 books each in them. So Deliver is the first one in this one. And you know what, maybe I should just put the picture up on screen because that cover isn't helpful at all. So anyway, so this one follows Liv and Josh, and it is a trafficking romance, and it's also a captor-captive romance. However, Liv, our heroine, is the captor, and she captures Josh, which I have never read before. Whenever I read captor-captive romances, it's always the other way around. It's always the hero taking the heroine. So it was an interesting dynamic, to say the least, of having this one. So Liv is a part of this ring where, you know, she basically has to kidnap people, train them, and then sell them off to people who want certain things out of the people that they're looking for. It's very messed up. It's very dark, I know. And Josh is a star football player in his town. His family is very well known in his church, and he's just like very much a good boy. And she ends up taking him and trying to train him to be sold off. And when he gets there, you know, he's not willing to bend so easily as maybe people would have hoped, like the people in the business would have hoped. And I honestly want to leave it there because truly I did not know where this book was going, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I will just say I have never found a single book, like a trafficking type book, that I have ever liked. I always have issues with like ending up buying into the romance by the end of it, specifically because of like the circumstances. Like captive I can kind of get on board with more often than not, but trafficking I just can't do it. But this one, trust me, Liv is just as much stuck as Josh is. So I will just leave it at that. I really enjoyed this. Not my favorite Pam Godwin book, but still like so solid. It truly was like a really great story, and I can't wait to continue on with the series and with the other characters. Next up, I finally read Pestilence by Laura Thalassa. This has been on TBRs of mine for like years and years and years. I don't know how long I've wanted to read this book, but I finally did it, and it is a fantasy romance, and it is a 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So obviously this first one is Pestilence. It's the first of 4, and it is basically Pestilence has arrived to our world. Well, the 4 horsemen have all arrived to our world, and Pestilence is the first one making his way through. And basically he is, what did you find there? Is that a bug? Did you find a bug? Oh, you did find a bug. Okay, hold on, let mom squash it. I don't want you to play with it. Hold on, Dorian found a bug. Good boy, good bug hunter. Okay, anyways, where was I? What was I talking about? Pestilence. Okay, so Pestilence has arrived, and with him, he's brought the plague. And at the beginning of this book then, Sarah is just like a regular person, and she is she's part of just the population who's trying to figure out how we can stop Pestilence. So she ends up volunteering to stay behind. Pestilence is like on his way to her area, and she ends up volunteering to stay behind to be the one to try to kill him. And when he does, she shoots him, she burns him, and she's like, I did it. Well, look at me. Yeah, Pestilence doesn't die. You can't kill him. And he comes back to life and decides to take her prisoner. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to give you this plague. Instead, you're going to be my prisoner, and you're going to march with me as I make my way around the world and like kill people slowly. And that's going to be your punishment, because he's like, death is too much of a mercy for you. And it ends up being their romance. Here's the thing. This book started out so strong for me. I was so into it. I was so into their dynamic. It definitely takes them a long time to like get to a place where they want to be with each other, because Pestilence has a lot of anger for humanity, and obviously he has a job that he has to do, and that includes wiping out the human race. And Sarah, obviously, he's wiping out the human race. Like, she can't be attracted to him, she can't be into him, she can't see him for anything less than a monster. But then when she starts actually seeing that he is more than what he's doing, she ends up starting to fall in love with him. Here's the thing. Here was my thing with this book that kind of lost me a little bit, is it just got repetitive. Like obviously he's just on the road, and he's just like on his horse going town to town killing people. And that's like what it was. And that kind of got boring for me after a while. However, like overall as a whole, I still enjoyed the book. And I'm very interested in reading the other ones. Specifically, I really want to read Death, mostly because we saw like a little snippet of him and his cover is like the hottest of them all. But anyways, I will keep going with the series eventually, but I'm glad that I finally read this one. Okay, next up, I read The Antihero by Sarah Kate. So this was our Out of Bounds book club pick that I co-host with Nikki from Nikki and Bookland, and one of my anticipated releases of the year. However, here's the thing. This is when my slump hit me full force and I was like down on the ground struggling. And I liked it. I just like didn't care about it at all. So when I'm saying my opinion on this book, it is not like how I feel about the book, like objectively, you know, it's just personally, I felt zero connection to it. And you're going to notice that in the next couple of books that I kind of struggled with that. So this is not a bad book by any means. I would still recommend it. I still enjoyed it, but it definitely did not hit as hard as I was hoping it would. So this one follows Adam and Sage. So this one is a new series for Sarah Kate. It's the Good Brothers, and Adam is the son of one of Texas's most prominent preachers, and he's grown up in the church, and he like writes sermons for his father. He's very involved in the church, and he just kind of has this image laid out for his life of him being like a godly man, coming from a godly man, and living his life that way. However, then he discovers that his father is actually a member of a sex club that his dad has infamously been trying to get shut down because it's like sinful and whatever. But he finds out that he's not only a part of it, he actually owns it. And he has some rage for his father. And there's some like other issues with his dad that kind of build up, but he just decides that he is going to destroy his father's reputation by any means necessary. And that includes starting uploading some videos with Sage, who is a woman that he met out at a diner one morning for breakfast. She's very much the antithesis of everything that he thought he would ever want in a woman. She has dyed hair, she has tattoos, piercings, she works at the sex club. She just lives her life very freely and like from no constraints of like religious boundaries at all. And that's nothing like he ever thought he would have. Like he thought he would have like a very like traditional woman. Sage is also trying to get revenge on her ex-boyfriend, who is the other owner of the club, and has never really like taken anything of what she says into consideration, and she's ready to kind of get back at him too. So the two of them agree to kind of get back at her ex-boyfriend and his dad by doing these videos together, and it ends up spiraling from there. I liked this book. It's not my favorite by Sarah Kate. I've read almost all of her backlist at this point, and you know, it just wasn't my favorite. I didn't not like it. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I just feel kind of like neutral on it. I had a hard time kind of buying into like the premise, I guess, a little bit of like their choices, but I don't know. Overall, it was fine. It wasn't my favorite. Okay, next up, I read In a Little While by Penelope Black because I needed a novella so desperately, and this hit the spot, honestly. So this one follows Maura, and she is, what is she? Is she like 18 or 19? And for the summer, as a favor to her dad, for I don't even know why, she ends up getting to go to this one mafia dude's house that he shares with his two brothers and his nephew, who also happens to be Maura's ex-boyfriend. And she's like, how am I gonna spend a whole month with my ex and his 3 hot uncles? Well, you know, by hooking up with them. So she ends up getting there, and she ends up hooking up with the 3 uncles, and it ends up being that. Honestly, there's not much else to it than that. That's kind of it. That's kind of all you need to know. It's like 100 pages, and it was a fun time. I don't really have much else to say, but I would recommend. Okay, then next up, I read No Tomorrow by Carrie and Cole. So I jointly read this physically, or read it on ebook, and then listened to the audio of it. And this is my second Carrie and Cole book. And again, it's kind of the same issue that I had with Antihero. I just didn't feel any emotional connection to the story or to the characters whatsoever. Like, I felt nothing while reading it. And again, I don't think that's a reflection of the book, because I know Cheyenne, I'm so sorry, I know this is like her favorite book of all time. Like, she will not hear a single complaint about it, and I'm so sorry. Truly, I don't think it's a reflection on the quality of the book. It's just me personally where I was at. I just never once got connected with it. But with that said, No Tomorrow is a rock star, second chance, angsty, age gap, romance, I guess. In this book, you meet Piper and Blue. So Piper is just a young woman. She's living her life, going to work, going home. She has her routine. It's very like a safe, steady life that she has. And one day, I think on like a lunch break, she ends up going to the park and she spots this man singing and playing a guitar in the park with his dog, and that turns out to be Blue, and he is homeless. He just kind of roams wherever he wants to roam, playing music, and they end up connecting and they end up falling in love, and then he ends up ghosting her. And years later, she's listening to the radio and she hears his voice, hears his songs, and realizes that now he's a very successful musician, and it's them like getting connected again and all that stuff. So anyways, this premise had everything like built up to it to be a book that I would like love, but I'm telling you, like I never like felt that connection to it. It also does move fairly slow, like especially in the beginning. I do understand you needed to like establish a pretty like strong ground for their relationship before they're apart for years, but I felt like the beginning was a little slow, then it started to pick up for me a little bit, but then we like time jumped again and I was like, I just kind of felt like jolted around sometimes by it. And also Piper, you're in her POV for pretty much the whole time. I think you only get a couple POVs of Blue, and I think that would have really helped me out with the story because I was more interested in Blue and getting into his head than always being in Piper's. So I think if we would have had some more of Blue, that would have made it even better for me. But anyways, I still liked it. Like it was still a solid read, but it's not like anywhere near being a new favorite for me. And then I also listened to another audiobook. I listened to Divergent again because I was struggling after Antihero and No Tomorrow and feeling nothing. And I was like, come on, what is wrong with me? I couldn't tell you how many times I've read this book and like this series as a whole. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's a YA dystopian series. If you haven't read it yet, honestly, you still should. I love it. It's one of my favorites, and it just truly has kind of jump-started me back out of my slump. I'm listening to the second book right now, and it's really doing something for me, people. So I'm feeling good, like pulling out of my slump and everything. But with listening to this again, I mean, this is still a favorite of mine. So technically, I guess this was like my favorite of the month, but also that's not really fair because it was a reread. Anyways, this one follows Triss, and she lives in Chicago, or like what is Chicago after basically the destruction of the world, and people live, their society is divided into 5 factions, and when you turn 16, you have to choose which faction you want to be a part of and like what your brain like is supposed to be wired for. However, Triss is divergent. She's not meant for just one, but that is a dangerous thing in this society, and she ends up switching factions and joining Dauntless and trying to hide her divergence there while also trying to make it through their initiation. And when she's there, she meets Four, and he's cute and they fall in love. And anyways, but there's also war and corruption and corrupt leaders, and it's up to the teenagers to get their world back on track. And yeah. Last but not least, I read Deconstructing Delilah, which by Allison Rhymes, which is our Smut Club pick for this month that I co-host with Cheyenne from That Tall Book Girl. And I really, really enjoyed this one. This is probably my second favorite of the month, right behind Divergent. So this one follows Delilah, and she is a like Mormon polygamous cult escapee, I think. Like, I forget what the like sect is called, but anyways, she like has escaped. She was going to be married off. She was going to be a child bride, and she was rescued and taken out, and now she is like 18 and she's off living with a friend of hers. Is it a friend or was it like a cousin or something? But she's off living and she is starting to go to college and just trying to like adjust into the real world a little bit, and she ends up meeting Pope, and he is a bit of an enigma. He's quite a bit older than her. It is an age gap romance. And he just like is constantly like wanting to talk about religion, but he's not like a part of the religion. It's more like he wants to have like an open discussion about it. So she's kind of intrigued by that because she's trying to figure out her faith herself, because she obviously doesn't want to stay in what she was raised in, but she also doesn't want to like go the complete opposite of like not believing anything. So anyway, she kind of like seeks out Pope a little bit, and she starts to develop a bit of a crush on him. However, he is like, I am not going to get with you. I am way too old for you. You are not in a good place, and like this isn't happening. And honestly, I was a little worried at the beginning of the book because I was like, she's a little naive. However, then we get a time jump, and then she's in her early 20s, or like I think I said even like mid-20s, and she's like established. She's graduated college, she has a job, she ends up starting to work at a spicy club and doing like their accounting and stuff, and she gets reconnected with Pope, and it's just then her life after she's gone through a lot of therapy, had a lot of years out from the cult, and kind of like had time to self-reflect, and now she's in a much better place in her life, and when Pope comes back in, she still wants Pope, and oh, is he so possessive over her, but he is not interested in monogamy. So they strike up like a little bit of an agreement and start kind of being like friends with benefits a little bit. But Pope, like I said, he is so insanely possessive of her. But let me tell you, Delilah stands up to him and meets him tit for tat. And I loved it. I loved her character. I was so impressed with the growth that she went through over the years. And truly, this book just like blew me away. I kind of just had like no expectations because I had never read anything by this author. And honestly, I was in such a bad slump that I didn't really have any expectations for this book, but it was so good. I thoroughly enjoyed it and would definitely recommend if you haven't read it. So anyways, that is it for today's video. I don't know I have a recommendation video going up on Tuesday next week, but I don't know what's going to be up after that. We'll see. So anyways, that's it for today's video, and I will see you when I see you.